Welcome back to Contemporary Black Voices, where again we take on the most pressing issues affecting the Black community. Our topic today is, can Black women be tradwives? And we have our guest today, Brenya Samasi. And so we still having this discussion about the practicality of the tradwife in Black homes. So, Brenya, I'm going to come back to you because you were talking about a porch scene that you want to share with us.
All right, so we are today talking about the Black tradwife, and there's a much more value, the pros that you were asking about, and I'll go to the cons again, that the Black tradwife does. So remember, in our country, United States, there are many, many cities in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, in Chicago City, Baltimore City. What happens there, remember the latchkey kid who comes home from school? Well, the tradwife, if she has zero kids or minus one or whatever, she tends to be the one that helps to protect the community and say, come on into the house and have some peanut butter sandwiches after school. The Black community is that way. We're more collaborative in the city places, right? And we all know that. So there's a lot of value to what they do. And I, again, in the introduction, I said it was the hardest job. It really is, because I have comparison, right? At the so-called water fountain in the workplace, you get a break, you get kudos, you get talked about, you get certificates and awards. The trad wife never gets that, for real. I mean, data-wise, maybe 10 get it out of 100, right? 10% or less. The cons is that with the Black community, we don't tend to have the buffer system that other communities do. Let's say the Asian community, what else? The Hispanic community. We don't have those buffer systems of like, in our account, we actually have a good old life insurance policy that great auntie, twice removed, left lots of money to the trad wife. We don't have that because we don't have the system in place where life insurance is a norm throughout our nation. In Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Boston, us Black women don't tend to have that as a basis, which some of us are trying to have happen. We're working on that, right, Sharon? We're really working on that, and it's catching on, but not like other communities. And then two, we don't have the trust funds in place, which are others, the Asian community, Hispanic community, and other communities have the trust funds. So those are buffers plus family buffers.
What do you mean buffers? Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm gonna throw a couple of things out there, and you guys could run with it. But no, I know, like traditionally in our community, right? This idea of a tread wife, traditionally in our community, it's been non-existent because most of the Black women in our community have been domestics. So they've always worked outside of the house and worked in someone else's home. Yeah. And so that's one of the things I want to throw out there. But the other thing I want to throw out there is just economically, this trend and that it doesn't make sense. The last study I saw, I think I shared it with you guys, McKinsey study, it said it's going to take, at the current rate, 500 years for Black families to catch up with white families economically. So the idea that the Black woman is going to leave the workforce, now it's going to be 1,000 years before we catch up. So I mean, I think economically, the idea that we're even able to do that, you know what I mean? There's the income disparity is tremendous between Black households and white households, and I remember the last statistic I saw, a college-educated Black man makes the equivalent wages of a high school dropout white man. So that was also in the study, and so there's a tremendous wage gap.
Caleb, I'm all with you. Wait a minute. A college graduate Black man.
Yep.
Makes the equivalent to
a white high school dropout in wages.
Well, I'll use myself as an example. I know I made, teaching at the university and the college, I made comparable to what the white instructors were making.
You're the exception.
You are an exception.
But on average,
you are
the statistics are
still today an exception.
Black college graduate male makes the equivalent of a white male high school dropout.
But let me
economically speaking, this tread wife thing.
I just want to make a real quick comment. I agree with what you have said.
I don't, because there's a bias, he said.
Okay,
There's a bias
but I'm thinking, I hate to say it with the two women who are on the panel, that you guys are all washed up. because I don't believe that this is really happening. And then in your opening statement, you said make meals from scratch. I don't know very many women who's making anything from scratch.
All right.
Even if it's a white woman, they go to the store and
Buy
get
the
some.
box.
Okay,
Yeah, they get something unpackaged.
Sharon, do you mind if I jump in with these men?
Come on.
Okay, so one of our wonderful men made a big bias. He said, working outside the home. We know as women that this trad wife is 100% working, and you brought up domestic when you said that. 100% working in the house and getting zilch. The domestic black woman who's working as a domestic worker gets a little bit of money. The trad wife gets zero except from the person who is bringing in the income. And please remember, you guys are an exception. Please remember that based on data from criminal justice data, you're an exception in terms of giving your wife all the money, so that she can buy the ingredients, the groceries
Wait a minute,
to
you
make
said
those.
all the money.
Okay, your turn. There you go.
My point was that tradition,
There you go.
historically,
She said it.
There you go.
Don't let it go the first time.
But the second time,
she
no,
said
my
right,
point was
all the
historically in our
money.
community, not today, but
She's really
historically.
Lord stuff.
But this is how I'm looking at it. I'm not getting all
Mhm.
I'm not getting all bent out of shape on the topic because to me, in reality, given the cost of living it is now, it's going to take two to tango. You have to make some choices. Do you want a $300,000 home, or are you willing to live in a $100,000 home? If you're willing to live in a $100,000 home, maybe one person's salary can do it.
But Dr. Sharon,
But if you want to live here, then you know it may take two. I think that although no matter your opinion, I think the most realistic contemporary image of the black family on TV was the Cosby Show and Blackish, where both spouses work. They came home. They collectively worked together to take care of the kids and stuff. Got them prepared for getting them out the house. So I think that is probably the most realistic image of the black. Even good times, you know, the mother and the
Both of 'em,
father had to go out to work. You know, even though they didn't own the apartment, but they had to both go out to make enough money to sustain that family because there was a period there where James didn't have a job. So what's her name?
Florida.
If Florida didn't have a job, they were just SOL.
But that was different in.
But it was different. But it
in
took
the other one.
But it took it took both of them to work just to offset any economic shortfall that they might incur.
But it was different in, was it the Jeffersons? Making my way.
Well, he
up?
owned the dry cleaner.
He
and
owned the
yeah,
dry cleaner,
yeah.
and she would be the trad.
Yeah, she
Right,
would be
right.
the trad wife,
And
which would be-
had a maid. So
It did have to be.
and they had a maid.
And-
So maybe that was a fantasy show.
Yeah.
But he felt that moving on up meant I work, you stay home. We
Yeah.
don't get a maid because we are moving on up
Yeah.
to the
Right.
Now, in economics, we look at the fact that the trend of both life partners working outside the home, also for all ethnicities, was the trend that supply and demand economics that drove up actually the prices. So we look at that and we analyze that like at the places like the World Bank where I worked. We analyze what drove up prices, and that's the main thing that drove up prices because now there are two incomes that could compete for the food in a grocery store. There are two incomes that could compete for two cars or one car shared. So supply and demand economics also, in short, I mean, it's more complicated than supply and demand economics, drove up the prices in the US because two people were working. So we can't just jump to the conclusion that two people are needed to work. It's our country changed after Second World War, June Second World War, because two people in the household began to work. But then again, we're talking about black women. That's totally different from what I just said. Totally different.
I got a friend, and he wants to know where he can find one of these trad wives.
Wait a minute.
That's a good one. That's a
He
good one.
wants to find one.
How come? How come?
And it's kind of funny. I'm thinking that culturally, that this tradwife phenomenon may be more attuned to non-Black communities.
I agree.
And because saw one lady at HEB, the grocery store. And it always gets me when I see these these young women. It's kind of like, dang, how many babies do you have? They got a baby hanging on their shoulder, baby hanging on their shoulder, a baby in here, maybe two or three, I don't know. Then they got that super duper stroller,
yeah.
3 babies in it. She needs to stay home, or because well, she probably has to stay home. But I think that it's a more of a cultural piece. But you do have some Black women who are adopting the tradwife phenomenon as well. However, I do hear their husbands speak quietly among themselves, and I'll just be passing you, and I hear them saying, "I got to figure out how to make more money." Well, when she was working, you had that more money coming in, but whether he fully agreed with her staying at home is always going to be the question mark. Maybe he felt that he wanted this at one point in time, but when you start talking about we need more money.
So the other day at Costco, I was taking photos of the price of diapers and so on because I don't know, and I'll tell you why. Because
Yeah, I want to
because
know that.
because the daycare, from your example of the woman with many babies, the cost of a baby, average baby in a moderate state in the U.S. now to go to daycare is $1,200 a month, a baby, and actually I let me recap that. The baby's more expensive because they have the diapers and they have to be changed and they have to be held and they have to be fed. The toddlers on are about 1,200 a month, and this is fact. And my students always talk about this because of the classes I teach. We go over this information. So look it up in the state you're in, the city you're in, and average healthy credited daycare, how much does it cost for each child to go? And it's not a bulk price, each child. So when you have 2 children, it is 2,400. So I'll give you a quick example and I'll give it back to you. So this was 20 years ago when I was working full time at the clinic, mental health clinic in Maryland. And at mental health clinic, our intake officer, it was the best in the world, the best clinic in the world, for real. And our intake officer was a wonderful person. She said her take-home pay was $0 because of her 2 sons being in daycare, period. So remember that about women. And that the only reason she was working and she was a positive, optimistic woman is because of the insurance, because her husband was, I won't say what it is so you don't identify her, but blue collar worker who had no insurance. And so she only worked for insurance because her take home pay was 0 because she paid everything to the daycare per week, per month. I have to say that as well. So please, when you do the calculation, do it mathematically and the right data. Please do that because it's for women to be working, it's not necessarily bringing home two incomes.
So I know we're running out of time, but I just want to throw this out there. So it used to be a negative connotation toward that. They used to be called kept women. And so is that still a negative connotation for
Yes.
the women to be staying at home?
Don't call women kept women.
They used to call them that. That's what they used to call them. And so
Who's
there
we?
used to be a negative
Who is
connotation.
we call them that? Males?
My friend.
You said it right,
And it used to be,
males.
right? It used to be negative, right?
Yeah.
For women
Yeah.
to
And
stay at
that's
home
a,
like that.
that's a con. And that's a con. We don't
So-
use that.
So with that being said,
Oh, we can't drop that bomb and leave.
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge Chris's friend. Now, if you want to find you a trad wife, have Chris get, I can give him probably some locations for you to find your trad wife. And then you can come on the show and tell us how you feel about that. But with that,
Put it in the comments. Put the location in the comments.
Before we go, though, I would like to say one thing. I would like to really acknowledge all of you and Carl for everything that you did for me while I was out. So for all of our viewers, as well as those who are on the set and those who are behind the scene, I sincerely say thank you.
and with that being said, we want to thank you for listening in on today's topic, Can Black Women Be Trad Wives? And we encourage you to stay tuned for hot topics